I like to quote a person named Amanda LaShaw, who's at the University of California, Santa Cruz. She says this thing, she came to UIC and she blew the roof off the spot, right? Everybody, when she said it, everybody was, oh, right? But what did she say? She said, every educational reform written since 1850 has been a failure according to its own language. Now, if we think about that, right? Every mainstream educational reform from Horace Mann to the Elementary and Secondary Education Act known as No Child Left Behind has been a failure according to its own language. So what is this thing, school? And are we talking about a school to prison pipeline, or are we talking about a school and prison nexus? These are places that don't necessarily represent pathways to each other, but mirrors of each other. Right? Remember, the rules are the same. Lining up, wear a uniform, lockstep, and all punishments for lockstep. The whole is suspension. You walk through riot horses. You walk through a metal detector. Some schools do cavity searches. Right? So this thing around thinking about this thing. So this last point, I started reading these, and this is always interesting to say this on tape, right? I started reading these anarchists named Fred Moten and Stefano Harney. They wrote a very interesting book called The Undercommons, right? Now, you talk about dense shit. Ooh. Right, you got to read it. You know, so some of you have had this experience with books, right? You got to read it, walk away from it, breathe for a little bit, go outside, go hang with the homies, and then now you kind of figure with each other. Okay, do I go back to this thing? All right, right. That's how reading the Undercommons is. You got to struggle with the Undercommons, right? But what they talk about in Undercommons is this thing called a fugitive space. Right? And I think about fugitive space very simply, right? My father will be 75 this August. He was in 3rd grade in 1948. He had 66 students in his 3rd grade classroom, right? They sat 3 to a table with a slate, right? And my father's he's the person who's always like, look, anytime somebody tells you, well, back in my day, I had 1 shoe and a shovel, right? He's like, they're lying, right? But his thing was, if you got 66 young folks in a classroom and 1 teacher, some days you're getting taught and some days it's, hey, right? So a group of women saw this dynamic and said, we're going to open our houses so folks can get the opportunity to read, right? And they were right in the Ida B. Wells homes. They called them reading houses, right? And they were just spaces where you would go and read. They had all these books. They were all teachers at a place called Oakland Elementary School. They would go into spaces, and my father would be like, man, we would be in there with older folks. So folks would be coming from work at the stockyards, sit next to me reading a book, right? We would be exchanging books. So this thing around this fugitive space is a space that is not necessarily imbued or connected to formative or formal mainstream education, but actually is connected to a purpose, a larger political project of you being able to make informed decisions. Now, this always becomes the question. So when we talk about organizing space, when we talk about the political nature of our work, is it a fugitive space? So my father was educated, written large, in a fugitive space as a 3rd grader. And where do those fugitive spaces exist? I ask everybody across the country this question, and I'm gonna see how you all answer it. Now, when we think about education and what it means to us, would the majority of us say that we got the majority of our education inside or outside of school? Outside. Then what are we doing? We all know this, but folk got hella degrees. Hella y'all seen people with, y'all seen folks with read the name, the footer at the bottom of the page, and it's like a paragraph long, right? I tell anybody who has a job description in their card or what have you, that's a paragraph long, it's a nothing job. You are the vice provost of the fax machine. Right? That's what that means. Right? That's exactly what that means. Right? So this thing around troubling that begs a number of different questions, right? So in that fugitive space, where are we and can we operate in these fugitive spaces with the purpose of engaging young folks and families in justice on their terms, right? Which becomes a question in our work.